This will sound very strange, but the mass school shooting in Uvalde, Texas on May 24th is a prophetic sign from God that is predicting that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash that will be caused due to a bird strike in St. Louis on precisely December 26th, 2022. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction was made ahead of time, as does this timestamped email and forensic notes PDF. If you are skeptical, please email me and I will forward these to you. Alright, words cannot describe how important this video is. It is one of the most important videos on this channel, without a doubt. Make sure you watch all of this video. In Bible prophecy, the number 666 is symbolism for the Antichrist, and it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash 6 times 6 times 6 days after the extremely prophetic Uvalde shooting. 6 times 6 times 6 days is 216 days, and the Antichrist was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. It is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on December 26, 2022, exactly 216 months, which is also 6 plus 6 plus 6 years after the extremely prophetic Indian Ocean tsunami. The significance of this connection will be explained later in this video. One of the purposes for this prediction is to establish that the main conclusions being stated in this video are fact. It is a serious warning for those that disagree with the things being stated in this video. And to not appreciate this is to miss entirely the point of this prediction that is from God, and it is to miss the point of this video and video channel. The short beginning part of this video will be a synopsis of the prophetic sign that was the Uvalde, Texas shooting massacre, which will be followed by a video that was made in July of 2019 that regards the many prophetic signs that God has given of mass school shootings that are clearly, without a doubt, communicating that they are judgment warning for abortions. Make sure you watch all of this extremely important video. If you are interested in God's big picture of signs, if you are interested in God, if you are interested in why judgment destruction is coming upon America and the world, make sure you watch all of this video. The murder of children, the murder of kids in schools, mass school shootings symbolize God's judgment for the murder of unborn babies. The school shooting in Uvalde, Texas that killed 21 people occurred 21 days after the leak of the Supreme Court decision on abortion. The Supreme Court document leak was a breach of security. A main aspect of this story of the Uvalde shooting is the breach of security at the school by the shooter. Even though he had been firing his gun outside the school for 5 minutes, he was able to enter the school through an unlocked side door. Another main aspect of this story is how the police officers waited 78 minutes on site before breaching the classroom to engage the shooter. The shooting in Uvalde, Texas is located between the border city of Del Rio and San Antonio. A border patrol agent was the hero that killed the shooter. A main theme in God's big picture of signs is that the border wall, the southern border, is symbolism for walls of security being breached, as in the book of Joshua and the Hebrews that marched around the walls of security of ancient Jericho before they collapsed in God's judgment. This is what the southern border wall of security symbolizes, and for example, the name Trump, as in President Trump, in archaic English, the word Trump is the word for trumpet, or the sounding of a trumpet. And it is no coincidence that Trump's presidency has been synonymous with his border wall of security, and that trumpets were blown before the walls of security collapsed in judgment on Jericho. God has also used the city San Antonio to symbolize the breaching of walls of security at the Battle of the Alamo. And that's why this sign, this prophetic mass school shooting, occurred just west of San Antonio and just east of the border city Del Rio. What is also amazing confirmation of this is that it is US Highway number 90 that connects San Antonio to Uvalde, which connects to Del Rio at the border. The most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, is the number 9, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment, and in his signs God frequently uses the number 90 to symbolize the number 9. It is also US Highway number 90, which gives this national judgment symbolism. 21 is 3 times 7. 21 days and 21 deaths symbolizes 3 sets of 7, and there are 3 sets of 7 recorded in the book of Joshua before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. On the 7th day, the Hebrews marched around Jericho 7 times, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. This is why President Trump's election campaign and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, and why on the first day of his presidency, on Inauguration Day, President Trump was exactly 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old, which was 3 sets of 7, and paralleled the 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua. Joshua, the leader of the Hebrews, led them around the walls of security 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. On the day that President Trump was elected by 77 electoral votes, the leader of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, had been in power for exactly 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days. The number 21 symbolizes 3 sets of 7, and this is why it was 21 deaths, 21 days after the leak, the breach of security at the Supreme Court regarding abortion. This 21 days period in between the breach of security at the Supreme Court over abortion and the murder of 21 people in the school shooting is confirmation that mass school shootings have been judgment warning signs for the murder of unborn babies. 19 of the deaths were children. The number 19 symbolizes God's perfect judgment. From the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes judgment, and the number 10 symbolizes God's perfect order. Hence, 19, which is 9 plus 10, is God's perfect judgment. 19 also symbolizes judgment warning given to ancient Israel in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10 and 11. More is explained regarding this in other videos. One of the most important aspects of this prophetic sign, that was the Uvalde school shooting, was its location. As was explained, the location of Uvalde, Texas, is what makes this such an important sign. Its location is in between San Antonio and Del Rio on the U.S. border with Mexico. Again, San Antonio and Del Rio both symbolize America's walls of security being breached in God's judgment. Again, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment, and Uvalde, Texas connects with Del Rio and San Antonio with US Highway 90. This is why this prophetic sign occurred exactly 9 weeks before the extremely prophetic sign on Interstate Highway 70 in St. Louis on July 26th. And one reason why July 26th was known over a year in advance that it would be the day of a major prophetic event is that it was exactly 999 days after the historic barge on the Niagara River moved for the first time in over 100 years since the year of Spanish flu, and Niagara Falls and the Niagara Barge are Noah's flood and Noah's Ark symbolism. And it moved on the same day that the Maria fire began in California, which burned 9,999 acres, which in turn was exactly 110 weeks after the prophetic Hurricane Maria sign in Puerto Rico, which is Spanish America, and it involved an emergency evacuation rescue of 70,000 people in the middle of the night due to the threat of a flood because of the damage that was caused to the dam by Hurricane Maria. People were informed through knocking on the doors in the middle of the night because the power was out. And as explained in other videos, God pairs the numbers 9 and 110 together to confirm the signs and connections, and to point to the 9/11 judgment warning through the 110 stories of the Twin Towers that collapsed. And Joshua in the Bible died at the age of 110, and he led the Hebrews around the walls of security before they collapsed in God's judgment. And through Wall Street in Lower Manhattan, which is named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. On July 26, 2022, the city of St. Louis experienced extremely prophetic, historic, and destructive flooding. In the Bible, the number 70 symbolizes God's judgment on a nation. The emergency evacuation of 70,000 people due to the threat of a flood from the dam bursting connects with exactly 110 weeks and then 999 days to the flooding in St. Louis. In the flooding in St. Louis, there were 70 rescues by firefighters, and a portion of the I-70 highway was closed due to it being flooded, and the I-70 highway parallels the 70-mile-wide path of totality of the Great American Eclipse judgment warning prophetic sign. The eclipse passed over St. Louis exactly 600 plus 600 plus 600 days before the flooding on the I-70 highway. In the Bible, Noah was 600 years old at the time of the flood judgment. 600 plus 600 plus 600 days is also symbolism for 666, which in Bible prophecy is symbolism for the Antichrist. The Antichrist will become president again through the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. Michelle Obama will replace Kamala Harris, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. It is believed that Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis, right near the I-70 highway, right near the portion of the I-70 highway that was closed due to flooding. One reason for knowing this is that exactly 6,000 plus 6,000 plus 6,000 days before the day it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on November 3rd, was the day of a prophetic plane crash right near the I-70 highway in St. Louis in 1973. Another reason for knowing this is that the location of the crash in 1973 was right near the location of the I-70 highway that was closed due to flooding on July 26th. And this flooding was right where Highway 370 meets the I-70 highway. Highway 370 hints at 37, which hints at 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua, which is symbolism for America's walls of security collapsing in God's judgment, which is why the flooding at the I-70 and Highway 370 was exactly 9 weeks after the shooting in Uvalde, a city that is in between San Antonio and Del Rio and is connected by the U.S. Highway 90. Another reason for knowing that Harris's plane will crash near the I-70 highway is that in the movie Knowing, a movie that I happened to watch while I was visiting friends in St. Louis, the plane crashes over a busy highway. In the account of Noah's flood, the flood waters lasted for exactly 5 months. And exactly 5 months after this extremely prophetic, historic, and destructive flooding in St. Louis will be the date of the predicted crash of Kamala Harris in her airplane in St. Louis. This 5 months is also 153 days, and in Jesus' last miracle, 153 fish were caught in the net, which was symbolism for the end of the age of fishing for men before his second coming. 153 is 9 times 17, which hints at the president that was president from 2009 until 2017, and also first arrived in Washington, D.C. as the senator in the 109th Congress, lived on 109th Street while studying at Columbia University, and will return to the District of Columbia as the president after the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash during the 117th Congress, and after Michelle Obama will replace her as the vice president during the 117th Congress. And so the Uvalde shooting connects with an extremely prophetic 9 weeks to the flooding, which in turn connects with a prophetic 153 days, which is also exactly 5 months, to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. And the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that mass school shootings have been judgment warnings from God for abortions. And the predicted date that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis on December 26, 2022, will be exactly 6 plus 6 plus 6 years, which is also 6 times 6 times 6 months. Extremely prophetic, historic, and destructive flooding that was caused by the 9.0 earthquake in Indonesia that caused the Indian Ocean tsunami. 666 is symbolism for the Antichrist, the 44th president that grew up in Indonesia for 4 years. The Indian Ocean tsunami hints at Kamala Harris, who is of Indian descent. And her plane crash will be 6 plus 6 plus 6 years, which is also 6 times 6 times 6 months after this flooding, and also will be 6 times 6 times 6 days after the Uvalde shooting. The following is the video that I posted in July of 2019. Hello, welcome. I have interrupted production on a video explaining what happened on July 13th, the day of the New York City blackout, Hurricane Barry, and the earthquake in Manhattan, Montana, that is just outside Yellowstone National Park. It can't be overstated how extremely prophetic and important July 13th was. There is a ton of mind-boggling information to share with you regarding July 13th. In the process of researching and learning about what the Lord communicated on July 13th, something shocking and truly profound was discovered, which is that mass school shootings are judgment on America for abortions. The Lord is allowing the murder of people's children because people are allowing the murder of unborn babies. These school shootings are also signs that are warning of the soon coming destruction of America. This is an extremely important discovery, and as far as I am aware, this is the first time these conclusions have been reached. Please share this very important video with everyone. Make sure you watch this video to its end, as the information builds on itself. This video is one of the most important videos regarding the Lord's end times signs. Those that follow this channel know that for God, timing is very important. Not only does God demonstrate through the Bible his interest in precise timing, but also his signs are coming with immaculate timing embedded in them. This video will explain how God has aligned the timing of the 5 most deadliest and most infamous school shootings since Columbine in 1999 in order to communicate judgment warning to America. The 5 worst school shootings were Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Umpqua Community College, and Parkland, Florida. The National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws was established at the, quote, First National Conference on Abortion Laws, Modification or Repeal, question mark, quote, held February 14th through 16th, 1969 in Chicago. From 1969 till early 1973, NARAL worked with other groups to repeal state abortion laws. NARAL's work was instrumental in bringing about the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in 1973. In 2003, the organization changed its name to NARAL Pro-Choice America. The Lord has used the date that NARAL was established, February 14th, 1969, in order to communicate his judgment warning signs. It was explained in the Joshua Tree's Holy Land Earthquakes video how the Parkland, Florida high school shooting was extremely prophetic. For example, 17 people died and 17 people were injured in the 17th year after 9/11. The reason for 17 people killed and 17 people injured is that the two planes that struck the two towers on 9/11 struck them 17 minutes apart. The Parkland, Florida shooting occurred exactly 6,000 days, which is 144,000 hours after 9/11. The number 144,000 symbolizes the end times and comes from the book of Revelation. In conjunction with this timing of the Parkland shooting occurring 144,000 hours after 9/11, a piece of fire escape fell 7 floors onto 2 people on Broadway Boulevard in Lower Manhattan, close to ground zero. 1 person died. The 2 people that were knocked down by the fire escape and were critically injured symbolized the 2 towers that were knocked down on 9/11 caused by the fire from the jet fuel. The Parkland shooting occurred on the 49th anniversary of the establishment of NARAL. 49 years is prophetic in the Bible. 49 years are described in Leviticus 25 and Daniel chapter 9. In the parallel with the 490 years from Daniel chapter 9 that were fulfilled at Jesus' triumphal entry, the 49 years precedes the symbolic 70th set of 7 years that began on July 17th, 2017, which is when the Jews prayed openly on the Temple Mount for the first time, and was exactly 49 times 360-day years after the Israeli Knesset decree to rebuild Jerusalem. So, through this 49 years connection between the Parkland mass murder and NARAL, and also this 144,000 hours connection between Parkland and 9/11, God is communicating judgment for the mass murder of babies and the coming destruction of America. The Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting that killed 21st grade children aged 6 and 7 was exactly 62 months prior to the Parkland shooting. In Daniel chapter 9, it is 49 years plus 62 times 7 years from King Artaxerxes' decree until Jesus' triumphal entry. In the parallel, it is 62 times 7 years plus 49 years until the Temple Mount event in 2017. So, 49 and 62 are the 2 periods of time in Daniel chapter 9. The Parkland shooting connects with NARAL with 49 years, and the Parkland shooting connects with Sandy Hook with 62 months. Parkland, in turn, connects with 9/11 with 144,000 hours. Therefore, Sandy Hook also connects with NARAL and 9/11. Therefore, this is shocking confirmation that murder of people's children in Sandy Hook was a judgment sign for allowing people to murder babies. By far, the most important video on the internet that regards the Lord's big picture of signs that are revealing the precise timing and precise day of the impending judgment and resurrection rapture is Joshua the Key to Revelation video on this channel. If you haven't watched all of it yet, you must do so. This video describes the parallel of the signs with the timing of events in the book of Joshua that occurred in 2018. May 27, 2018 was Pentecost in the calendar that watches for new moons, and May 27th was the indescribably stunning climax in the parallel when the walls fell in judgment on Jericho and Rahab's Gentile family was rescued. God has used this May 27th, 2018 date like no other date in communicating his signs. Again, NARAL was established on February 14th, 1969. Again, 49 years after this NARAL date was the Parkland shooting. In Leviticus 25, 49 years precedes the 50th year, which is the Jubilee year. In Bible prophecy, a year is 360 days. Exactly 50 biblical years after this NARAL date was May 27th, 2018, which was Pentecost. Pentecost means 50th. This is so shocking, there are no words. This most symbolic of judgment sign dates, May 27th, 2018, which was Pentecost, which is symbolized by the number 50, is 50 prophetic biblical years after NARAL. Brothers and sisters, God is saying America is about to be destroyed because of the millions of babies that have been murdered in abortions. According to the World Health Organization, there are 50 million abortions in the world every year. In America, it may be that there have now been over 50 million babies that have been aborted since Roe v. Wade in 1973, but 50 million is the number that is repeated in the culture. Therefore, this 50 years from NARAL to this most prophetic Pentecost, because Pentecost is symbolized by the number 50, is therefore communicating 50 million babies murdered. According to E.W. Bullinger, the number 4 is the number of things that have a beginning, of things that are made, of material things, of matter itself. It is the number of material completeness. Hence, it is the world number, and especially the city number. A Bible study on Damascus reveals that Damascus symbolizes the world. The numeric value of the name Damascus is 444. Strong's Concordance, G444, is the word for man. The Lord has repeatedly demonstrated the use of a series of 4s in his end times judgment signs. The Virginia Tech shooting was the deadliest school shooting in history. Including the shooter, 33 people died. The shooter also wounded another 17 people. A total of 50 people were killed or injured. 4,444 days after the Virginia Tech shooting, where 50 people were shot, was May 27, 2018, and Pentecost, which again means 50th. Pentecost is also symbolized by fire, and it was fire that came down on the 50th day out of Egypt, and tongues of fire came down on the day of Pentecost. Elijah also called down fire from heaven on Mount Carmel. In the must-watch Mount Carmel fire video, it was explained how the Mount Carmel fire in Israel occurred on December 4th, 2010, Hanukkah Day 4, and lasted 4 days, and killed 44 people, and was exactly 444 weeks before Pentecost this year in the observed calendar, which is beyond words amazing because Pentecost is when fire came down from heaven. In Genesis, it was Cain that committed the first murder and was judged for it. Cain was also the first man to be born, and therefore Cain symbolizes both murder and birth. 2012 presidential candidate Herman Cain was most famous for his 999 tax plan. The number 9 symbolizes judgment, and because in Genesis God judged Cain for the first murder, Herman Cain's tax plan was the perfect opportunity for God to demonstrate judgment. Herman Cain announced he was 70% sure he would run for president at the time of his birthday in December 2010. Again, in Genesis, Cain was the first man to be born. The 444th word in the Greek New Testament, G444 in Strong's Concordance, is the word for man. Exactly 444 weeks after Herman Cain's birthday in 2010, when he announced he would run for president, was Pentecost in the calendar that watches for new moons on June 16, 2019, and the day that symbolized the beginning of judgment. This Pentecost was the climax to the 2019 parallel of signs with the timing of events in the book of Joshua, and the day the walls fell in judgment on Jericho. I hope you got that, because it is stunning. Replay this part on Cain and Abel and Herman Cain if you need to. I mention the 444 weeks connection between Herman Cain and Pentecost, and the 444 weeks connection between the Mount Carmel fire and Pentecost, in order to demonstrate this pattern the Lord established. This is why 4,444 days between the shooting of 50 people at Virginia Tech and May 27, 2018 Pentecost is a very important connection. On October 1st, 2015, 9 people were killed and 9 people were wounded in a shooting at Umpqua Community College. This 9 people killed and 9 people injured is similar to how in the Parkland, Florida shooting, it was 17 people killed and 17 people injured. The reason for this is because God pairs the numbers 9 and 17 together in his big picture of signs as second witnesses to confirm connections and signs, and also to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, who was president from 2009 until 2017, and first arrived in Washington, D.C. as the senator from Illinois in the 109th Congress, lived on 109th Street while studying at Columbia University, and will return to the District of Columbia as president and Antichrist in the 117th Congress, which began in January of 2021. Also, the walls of security of the ancient city of Jerusalem were breached by the Babylonians on the 9th day of the month of Tammuz, and they were breached by the Romans centuries later on the 17th day of the month of Tammuz. In the Bible, the breaching or collapsing of walls symbolizes judgment. America's walls of security will collapse in judgment and will give rise to the Antichrist. Also, it is another story, it is another tangent, another aspect of these shootings, not just school shootings, but God is using shootings to symbolize the shots of the VACCINE, which is the mark of the Antichrist and is not a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. And the prediction being made in this video proves this, and this is the reason for why God has given me a voice through this prediction. It's to prove this. As well, not that it is related to school shootings, but in the Church Christ New Zealand massacre, it was 50 people killed and 50 people injured. The Christ Church shooting massacre is known for its 17 minutes of live video footage that went viral on social media. The reason for this is that it was pointing to the 17 minutes in between when the 2 planes struck the 2 towers on 9/11. This is why, again, it was 17 killed and 17 injured in the Parkland, Florida shooting massacre. Exactly 2 months after the shooting in the 2 mosques, 17 nations gathered together in Paris for the call to action in order to discuss how to censor the internet. The Feast of Pentecost symbolizes the church. Pentecost literally means 50th day. The number 50 symbolizes the church. This Christ Church massacre was a massive judgment warning for the church. As Peter said, judgment begins with the church. And the main theme of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, is judgment warning for the church. Specifically the American church, and even more specifically often the American Evangelical Church of Laodicea. As Jesus said, he reproves whom he loves. And the root of the bad tree that is producing the bad fruit in the American Evangelical Church is bad doctrine, and God has 100% identified what this doctrine is, It is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that in Revelation chapter 2, Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. And God has 100% identified what this doctrine is. The Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is sovereign grace and free grace, which come in the packages of Calvinism and dispensationalism, and both lead to the heretical doctrine of once saved, always saved. But this is explained much more in other videos. But again, the very reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove what I just said. 9 times 17 equals 153, which is a number that symbolizes the end of the age. As well, in the prophetic duck boat tragedy on a lake in Missouri in 2018, 17 people were killed, and 9 of the 17 were from the same family. The 17th triangular number is 153. The 17th triangular number in a 3-dimensional triangle is 969. 969 was also the age that Noah's grandfather Methuselah died at the time of the flood. 969 days after the Umpqua Community College shooting is May 27th, 2018 Pentecost. And one of the major signs we received on this May 27th, 2018 date was the epic, disastrous, destructive, once in 1,000 years flash flood in the historic town Ellicott, Maryland, which occurred exactly 666 days after another once in 1,000 years flood in Ellicott, Maryland. But this is explained in the absolute must-watch Is Joshua the Key to Revelation prophecy video, which I am now calling the Joshua Parallel video, which, as I mentioned earlier, is extremely important and essential. Again, May 27th, 2018 Pentecost was 50 biblical years after the establishment of NARAL in 1969. The last 3 numbers in 1969 is 969, and 969 days after the Umpqua Community College shooting is May 27th, 2018 Pentecost, which is symbolized by 50, and which is 50 biblical years after NARAL in 1969. So the extremely symbolic date when judgment begins, May 27th, 2018 Pentecost, connects with the prophetic Umpqua Community College shooting, the prophetic Virginia Tech shooting, and with the date NARAL was established. This is more shocking confirmation for this May 27th date that the Lord used to demonstrate a parallel of signs with the timing of events in the book of Joshua. And it is also more stunning Pentecost judgment symbolism. If you haven't watched the Is Joshua the Key to Revelation video on this channel, it is by far the most important video on the internet that regards the Lord's timing of the day of impending judgment and the resurrection rapture. If you haven't watched all of this video yet, you absolutely must do so. In recent videos, it has been explained how G220 is the word for rooster, how the rooster is the symbol for Peter, how Peter's name is Petros, which means rock in Greek, how Jesus is the rock, and therefore the number 220 symbolizes Jesus. The 220-pound stone that fell from the western wall and smashed the steps of the worship area on the 9th of Av symbolizes Jesus as the rock smashing the feet of the statue in Daniel chapter 2 at the second coming. In the Is Joshua the Key to Revelation video, it was also explained the huge prophetic significance of the 220 days connection between May 27th, 2018 Pentecost and the Rose Bowl Parade Jupiter locomotive float fire sign. One of the major prophetic signs we received on this day was the retaining wall collapse of the upper parking lot at Chimney Rock State Park, and this was 220 days, which symbolizes rock before this January 1st, 2019 date. which incidentally God used the numbers in this date to symbolize 9/11, which is why one of the prophetic signs on this date involved the historic locomotive named 119. Among other things, May 27th Pentecost is symbolized by fire, and the May 27th signs included Chimney Rock and also the oldest train station in the U.S. In other words, the 220 days connection between May 27th and the Jupiter locomotive float fire sign was huge, and this 220 days connection is the reason why the Jupiter locomotive float fire sign occurred when it did. In light of these connections that have been explained in this video between May 27th, 2018 Pentecost and NARAL and school shootings that have been judgment signs for abortions, this next connection is astounding beyond words. The Rose Bowl Parade Jupiter locomotive float fire sign was on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2019. On this day, we also received an astounding sign in the sun. This sign in the sun was also 220 days after May 27th Pentecost. A clear image of a baby fetus in a womb appeared on the surface of the sun. The baby appears to be in what is called the anterior position, which is the position a baby moves into around the 33rd week of pregnancy. Probably many of you have learned about this sign. The interpretation among watchers has been that this baby represents the church about to be born into heaven. The interpretation has been that this is a Revelation 12 sign. The speculation has been that the baby is wearing a crown. However, when I take a closer look, I think that, first of all, this image was not meant to contain much detail. I believe this image is representing an ultrasound image of a baby in the womb. As this sunspot sign rotates around the sun, the clear image of an ultrasound image of a baby in the womb lasts for over 24 hours, whereas what is interpreted as a crown lasts for maybe 4 hours. Within this 4 hours, the crown has what one could call a peak moment, and for the rest of the 4 hours, the crown is somewhat less discernible. Until the discoveries in this video were made, I was thinking that this sign of the baby in the sun was a rare exception of a sign that was simply meant to be neat or cool. The timing of this sign didn't seem to communicate any teaching. Like I have been saying in the videos on this channel, this has been a big error of the general watching community. Much more than the signs being for us to say neat and cool or for encouragement, the signs are coming with immaculate timing embedded within them, and it is through this timing that the Lord is teaching us things, including teaching us his precise timing of the precise day when the end times begins. It turns out that this sign in the sun is no exception after all, and that the Lord is teaching us through the timing of this sign. I find no other connection other than the 220 days connection to May 27th. Yet, this connection is massively important. The Jupiter Float Fire Wedding on Rails sign is a Revelation 12 sign, and so this baby in the sun is also a Revelation 12 sign. However, not only is the Jupiter Float Fire sign much more than a Revelation 12 sign, this baby in the sun is also much more than a Revelation 12 sign. As we have just seen in this video, May 27th clearly connects with NARAL and school shootings judgment signs. And so, the ultrasound baby in the sun sign also connects with NARAL and school shootings. It has also been explained in prior videos, including the must-watch Solar Storms video, that the end times will begin with a blackout caused by cosmic radiation from solar activity, symbolized in the fire coming down on Pentecost. May 27, 2018 Pentecost connects with a number of astounding signs in the sun. May 27th was 40 birth pains weeks after the Great American Solar Eclipse. Incidentally, this 40 birth pains weeks connection to May 27th makes this another connection between May 27th and this baby in the sun sign. 2 sets of 7 biblical years before the Great American Solar Eclipse was by far the strongest solar flare ever recorded. May 27th was the end of the Joshua parallel of signs. In Joshua 8, 30,000 men were chosen, and 30,000 days back from May 27th was the day a, quote, quite perfect crucifix, quote, was observed on the surface of the sun by astronomers on April 8, 1936. Exactly 88 years after this crucifix on the sun will be the next great American eclipse over America in 2024. In short, May 27, 2018 connects with signs in the sun, and May 27th Pentecost was the end of the parallel of signs with the timing of events in the book of Joshua when the walls of Jericho fell in judgment. Therefore, through this 220 days connection between May 27th and this baby fetus image on the sun, God is communicating that America and the world is about to be judged for its millions of abortion murders. The first school shooting massacre was Columbine in 1999. Columbine was the 9/11 type event that caused their world to change for the millennial generation. The millennial generation are the children of the baby boomer generation. 1999 was at the peak of baby boomers' children in high school. Abortion rights laws were enacted for baby boomers. Columbine was a massive judgment sign on baby boomers for their abortions. There have been school shooting massacres since Columbine, but Columbine is thought of as the start of this era of school shooting massacres. 65% of school shooters and thwarted shooters said that the Columbine school massacre was motivation for them. Like 9/11, what was shocking about Columbine at the time was the removal of a sense of security. After 9/11, America was no longer immune from terrorism and threats of mass destruction as a result of technology, in this case airplanes, in the hands of terrorists. America was no longer immune from what happens in a remote, unstable country like Afghanistan. The main story after Columbine was that if this tragedy could happen in a quiet suburb like Littleton, Colorado, then it could happen anywhere. The main effect of Columbine, especially for the millennial generation, was the loss of the sense of security. In the Bible, walls symbolize security, and walls falling symbolize judgment and removal of security. The number 110 symbolizes Joshua and the walls of security falling, as it is recorded that Joshua died at the age of 110. This is also why the Twin Towers that collapsed were 110 stories high. The Columbine shooting massacre occurred on April 20th, 1999. April 20th is the 110th day of the year. Those that follow this channel are well aware of the importance of the book of Joshua and how profusely the Lord is using the number 110 in his end times judgment signs. There are 360 days in a prophetic biblical year, and this is why we have 360 degrees in a circle. Half of a circle's degrees is 180, and the number 180 symbolizes repentance and turning 180 degrees away from sin. 180 days after Columbine was the earthquake in Joshua Tree, California, on the 10th anniversary of the World Series earthquake judgment sign. This is absolutely stunning. Through Columbine and this connection to the prophetic Joshua Tree, California earthquake, the Lord was communicating judgment on America's kids, especially baby boomers' kids, unless there is repentance for abortions. In the Bible, 20 years represents a perfect or complete period of waiting. For 20 years, Jacob waited to get possession of his wives and property and to be freed from the control of Laban, his father-in-law. The children of Israel were oppressed by Jabin, king of Canaan, and waited 20 years before Deborah and Barak freed them from bondage. Israel waited 20 years for the ark to be moved again after it arrived in Kirjath-jearim. Solomon spent 7 years building the house of God in Jerusalem, and another 13 building his home for a total number of 20 years. After he had completed both buildings, Solomon gave Hiram, the king of Tyre, 20 cities in the land of Galilee. Only about one-third of those that watched the July 17th tsunamis video also watched the July 4th earthquake video. The two videos are related, and the July 4th video is a must-watch. Both of these videos described how the Lord has used a period of 20 years in his end times signs. It was 20 years from the prophetic Papua New Guinea tsunami to the prophetic mini-tsunami on Minor and Major Island and the prophetic flood in Washington, D.C., all on July 17th dates. As well, it is 20 years from the Indian Ocean tsunami that affected many nations to Hanukkah Day 1 in 2024, and Day 1 of Christ's rule over many nations in the Messianic kingdom on earth. All right, this next connection is shocking and extremely sobering. 20 biblical years after the Joshua Tree earthquake was the July 4th earthquake judgment sign on America. The main aspect of this July 4th earthquake sign was the video footage of the kids performing in the school play. Columbine connects with the Joshua Tree, California earthquake that was on the 10th anniversary of the World Series earthquake judgment sign. And in turn, the Joshua Tree, California earthquake connects with the July 4th earthquake judgment sign that involved kids in a school that were screaming in terror. In other words, it is shocking and humbling beyond words that Columbine directly connects with the July 4th earthquake judgment sign. Therefore, the July 4th earthquake judgment sign is communicating judgment and destruction of America for abortions. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for these signs and communication. May we warn as many people as possible. The many details embedded in this aspect of the July 4th earthquake sign are explained in the July 4th earthquake video. You need to watch this video. I will play again the video footage of the earthquake. Again, the timing of the earthquake occurs precisely at the moment that the kids' hammers come down, like a judge's gavel coming down after his judgment. Following this, the camera then randomly pauses for 1 second on the American flag hanging in front of the wall that fell due to this earthquake. Then it goes dark, and this is alluding to the coming blackout at the beginning of the end times. April 20th, 2019 was the 20th anniversary of the Columbine Massacre. It was the 110th day of 2019. On this day, there was an international news story regarding 110 Kosovar ISIS terrorists being returned to Kosovo from Syria. That this story regarding 110 terrorists occurred on the 110th day of the year is one thing, but it is also the prophetic 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorism type event that was Columbine. God was communicating Columbine through this 110 Kosovar terrorists story on the 110th day of the year. Incidentally, this is another prime example of how the signs are teaching us things instead of simply being neat and cool. I had learned about this 110 terrorists on the 110th day of the year back in April. Only now, though, does this sign make sense in the big picture in his precise trail of signs. I should also emphasize that this 110 Kosovars story, as it says in the headline, involved mostly children. And as it is being explained, this is connecting to the Columbine shooting of children in the high school, which is judgment warning for the abortion of unborn children. In the week leading up to the 20th anniversary of the Columbine massacre, Columbine was again in the national news. In fact, what is amazing for me is that literally as I am writing this, Columbine is in the national news. Yesterday, it was reported that school administrators had decided not to demolish Columbine High School. The reason this was being considered is because of the morbid fascination with Columbine and dark tourism. Hundreds of people trespass onto the school grounds every year. On Monday, April 15, 2019, an 18-year-old woman from South Florida flew to Colorado, bought a pump-action shotgun and ammunition, and called in threats to schools in the area. She was obsessed with the Columbine massacre. 20 schools were locked down. It was said that every cop in Colorado participated in the intense manhunt for her. The manhunt story was covered in the national news, and it lasted 3 days until she was found dead in the woods as a result of suicide. She was found 3 days before the 20th anniversary of Columbine. Although tragic, this story is absolutely stunning because it brought Columbine back to the world's attention on the 20th anniversary of the massacre. As the sheriff said, quote, "This opens a wound, especially on this anniversary," quote. As well, it was 20 schools that went into lockdown just days prior to the 20th anniversary. In other words, this news story on the 20th anniversary was designed by God. The woman was from South Florida, the location of the Parkland, Florida school massacre. From the date of the Parkland massacre to the 20th anniversary of Columbine, it was 430 days. God instructed Ezekiel in Ezekiel chapter 4 that 430 days symbolized the 430 years that Israel and Judah would be punished for their sin. The Assyrians and the Babylonians would destroy Israel for their sin. This 430 days connection between Parkland and the 20th anniversary of Columbine is communicating that God is about to destroy America. The woman's name was Sol Pius. Sol Pius in Spanish means sun country. The 20th anniversary of Columbine was 110 days after the sign of the baby in the womb on the sun. This is another example of how the signs have been revealing that the beginning of the end times and the walls of security falling on America will commence with a blackout caused by the sun. So this is a second reason for the precise timing of the sign of the baby in the womb on the sun that confirms that this sign on the sun was a judgment sign for abortions. Not only was the ultrasound baby in the womb sign 220 days after the day the walls of security symbolically fell on May 27, 2018 Pentecost, but this sign on the sun was also 110 days before the prophetic 20th anniversary of Columbine. In other words, Columbine connects with May 27th Pentecost. In conclusion, these connections are incontrovertible evidence that mass school shootings are judgment on America for abortions. The Lord has allowed the murder of people's children in schools because people have allowed the murder of unborn babies. These school shootings are also signs that are warning of the soon coming destruction of America. The connections are also once again revealing Pentecost judgment symbolism. As far as I am aware, this video is the first to draw these conclusions regarding school shootings and abortions. I believe this information needs to get out far and wide. Please share this video with everyone. Anyone has permission to mirror any videos on this channel. If anyone would like to take the time and promote this video to Christian media, this is much appreciated. And to not ever stop sharing this video. The price you must pay for having learned this precious knowledge is to work towards letting others know about this information. And unless you are completely consumed with another ministry or have a health condition, you should know that you are obligated on a daily basis to hand out flyers that promote this video channel on street corners, car windshields, in busy parking lots, in mailboxes, or if anything, as you come across people in your daily life. For example, in the bank or in the aisles of the supermarket as you are shopping. If you are shy, you need to overcome this. Courage isn't a lack of fear, it is action in spite of it. Please contact me for the PDF file for the flyer. The main reason why many people will not agree with this statement that a Christian is obligated to work to get the news out to the world about this prediction is the bad Nicolaitan theology and doctrine that the vast majority of, quote, Christians, unquote, have, which is why the modern church, including and especially the evangelical church, is the lukewarm, stagnant church of Laodicea. And the very purpose of this prediction is to prove to these quote-unquote Christians that they have the Nicolaitan doctrine that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war on with the sword of his mouth. Most quote-unquote Christians don't fear God, and they don't really get the Bible. And this is the primary reason and purpose for the end times period of the Antichrist. In short, it's time for those that have barely been doing anything for the kingdom to finally make some serious sacrifices that will cost them, and to do some serious work, and to use their bags of gold and produce some fruit before they are thrown into the fire. When this prediction has come to pass, it will be a very, very big bag of gold. I encourage you to use it. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs for the gullible that will believe it because they don't have a solid biblical worldview. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. The New Age or New Spirituality or Consciousness religion is evil deception from Satan. Satan and demons will give Catholics and New Agers spiritual experiences that they think confirm for them their beliefs, but these spiritual experiences are demonic deception for those that refuse to love the truth and so be saved. There is a spiritual reality behind the material world that we see. The wages for sin is death. Sin means to miss the mark. No one is good, all have sinned. Because of sin, people are captives of the ruler of this world, Satan. People's souls belong to Satan, whose power over people is death. God took the form of a man, Jesus Christ, and paid the ransom that is owed to the ruler of this world. Through Christ's death and resurrection, he defeated sin and he overcame Satan's power in death. It is through Christ and his Spirit that it is possible for everyone to be forgiven of their sin, and we can have eternal life if we choose it. We can choose to follow Jesus out of captivity from sin and Satan. Or we can choose to reject this and remain a slave to this world, sin, and to Satan. If one rejects Jesus Christ, after they die, they will pay the price for their sin in hell, and then they will die the second death, and their soul will cease to exist. Believing in Christ means much more than simple intellectual agreement. It means to repent of sin and completely commit one's life and become a willing slave to Jesus and his kingdom. Jesus said we need to be born again, which implies a death of the self and a death to this world. Believing in Jesus implies living out one's faith through taking action that typically involves risk and sacrifice. This demonstration of faith through action is what it means to have faith and to believe in Jesus. Some Christians will tell you otherwise, but they are deceived and they ignore countless passages in the Bible. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com.